Hey everyone, welcome to Business Unchained, where entrepreneurs and business owners come together to power up on their journey to greatness.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for any financial decisions. Clients of Greenridge Wealth Planning may maintain positions in any securities discussed in this podcast.
All right, today's guest is a measure twice, cut once guy. His humble approach to business set him up for a super successful exit at an early age. You know, this guy, we always advise business owners when we start talking to them about their business to think about the sale now, no matter where they are in the process of when they're going to sell it. Always think about what the target is, because if you don't have a target, then what are you aiming for? And this was this guest's mindset when he got into business. His mom passed away at the early age of 50. He knew there was more to the life than money. And when he and his sister got into the family business, they focused on the exit first. And that way he would have the financial freedom to enjoy the time that he has with his family. So after 13 years of asking all the right questions, putting himself into thought leadership positions in his industry, and just with this laser focus, he and his sister had the exit that they actually planned for. And now he finds his passion coaching other like-minded business owners, spending time with Kim, Aiden, and Nan at their beach house. And he still asks the tough questions to business owners, except he's on the other side of the table, because he wants to help them to work at their peak performance and bringing their business to another level. So I bring to you our guest today, former CEO and owner of Seniors in Place, Adam Blecker. Welcome to the show.
All right. Thanks, Bobby.
So, dude, I'm glad I got to get you on. I know we've been working together for years. You know, first I was advising you, and now you've kind of fallen into a business, confidant, coach, person for me, somebody that I can kind of reach out to when I have to stress test some of my somewhat sane and somewhat crazy ideas.
Yeah.
But I think today, you're looking at your background and just kind of what we can hope to accomplish is more than just this list. But I'd love to talk a little bit about when you got into the family business, how'd you come up with your game plan?
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about Vistage and how you're running two groups and what are the biggest opportunities that you're consistently seeing for other business owners. And I'd really love to touch on the after sale, the reinvention process that you went through.
Yeah.
And, what was that like? So for you, I know that you're the guest here, right? This isn't about me and what I want. It's about the listener and it's about the guest. What is it that you're hoping to get out of this show or make sure that we throw on the parking lot to discuss before we leave here?
Yeah, no, I think those are really big areas that we can dig into. I'm glad to share the experiences that I've had. And my hope is just that our listening community gets some takeaways here, where we give them a little shortcut here and there. Some of the things that I did along the way took years to do and figure out, and I had to stumble a bit to get
Wait, it was a learning process? You weren't born with all of these skills?
That's
Get the hell out
I
of
wish.
here. Come on.
That would be so easy. But hopefully we could create some shortcuts for some people.
I always like to say the journeys kind of gives us a little bit of a tee up to what to expect from the story. So you started, we were talking pre-recording a little bit about being involved in 3 tech startups, and then you got involved in the family business. Bring us down, in a 30-second memory lane of how did this whole thing start for you, and where were you? What was your mindset? What were you doing? What was the landscape?
I was writing commercial software when I was 16 years old, and I was involved in 3 technology startups for, 13 years after that. It was a really fun environment.
Like commercial software, meaning what?
Meaning this is where it gets boring, but developing encryption software for security solutions.
At 16?
Yeah.
Attaboy.
Antivirus, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So it's fun.
Were these your businesses or were these other people that you were working for?
No, I had 2 founders brought me in as employee number 1. They went on to co-found together 3 different businesses, and I stayed on as employee number 1 with their journey. And I met, Bob Janicek was my original mentor.
Wasn't McAfee, right?
No, it was not McAfee. Thank God. But Bob Janicek was my mentor. He took me under his wing at 16 years old and put me in a lot of sink or swim situations, and I just kept swimming. So it was a really fun journey. But also there was a part of me that was very, very driven by money at that time. I wanted to make money. I wanted to earn. I wanted to prove myself by the size of my paycheck. And so I was all in and very singularly focused. And it wasn't until I lost my mom at 50 years old where, that taught me two things. It taught me, one, that life is short and precious, right? There's no guarantees.
Oh, it definitely is.
The other thing that it really resonated with me was...
now, how old were you at the time?
I was 21 when I lost my
okay.
mom. Yeah, I buried her on my day after my 22nd birthday.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, it was way too early to lose somebody that was that dear to me. But I share the story because there were the two lessons that she really taught. One was, life is precious, right? But the second one was she lives on today in her children, right? In me, and my sister, and my brother. Her impact on us continues, right? And so for me, I wanted to do something that was deeply human. And here I was sitting behind a keyboard and a mouse, programming all the time. And it wasn't human, right? So that was kind of the beginning for me of wanting to do something that was more mission-based. I left the technology career. I joined my father's company that he started in 2001. When he started the company, it was just a companion business, right? And then when I came into the business, we co-founded together, my sister, my brother, my father, and myself, a healthcare service firm that became Seniors in Place.
Okay.
Got some scale under it and grew it for 13 years.
So what were some of the, if we kind of go back, I remember when we met.
Yeah.
And when we met, it was, you were talking to everyone and their mother. You were running on these boards. You were making sure that you kind of soaked in as much information as you could about how to position yourself in the market, how to exceed your competition, in terms of not only profitability, but also service and operations. You wanted to make sure you knew what the exit looked like. Talk to us a little bit about that process when you took over as CEO, and that was the end game.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, it looks like that, right? 2020 it's very, very clear. But in reality, the experience of going through it was a little bit different. When I first took over, I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't.
Do we ever really know what we're doing?
Well, I don't know. I think we get better over time, but there's definitely that moment of truth where you're trying to do something that you care a lot about, but you don't know how.
Yeah.
And so for me, what I did, almost week one was just develop my North Star. What was this going to mean to me? And that was in the form of guiding principles and all of that, which ultimately became the guiding principles for the business. But I just needed a decision tree on how I'm going to act when I don't know the answer. And that was really instrumental in enabling me to learn on the journey and figure it out as we went along.
Did you have a mentor at that time that was helping to guide you, or what was, what were some of the resources that you had when you started to come up to those decisions?
I've had a few mentors in my life that have completely changed my life. When I was 16, Bob Janicek, took me under his wing, as I shared earlier. At one point, I got involved in Vistage, which is what I'm doing today. So 13-year journey with Seniors in Place. The last 8 years, I was a member of Vistage. My original chair was a man by the name of Steve Tafaro. And just the chance encounter that I had in meeting him changed my entire trajectory of my life, changed my children's lives, changed everything for me. My father was a tremendous mentor for me. We used to refer to him as Yoda.
I think you still do.
Yeah, I think we do. I think we do.
I've heard that slip out of your mouth a couple of times.
That's right. But these are just great people that greatly impacted my life.
How did Scott really change and impact the life of, because it seems like that was a pretty dramatic change or pivot point when you met him and as you started to develop that relationship? What about that was so impactful?
So Steve, right?
Steve, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. What he represented for me was a safe space where there was no agenda, where I could complain, I could talk, I could dream, and he could reflect back what it was that I was saying so that I could hear it. So often we lean on people around us. We lean on our employees, we lean on our board, on our family, and our friends. What Steve was for me was somebody that wasn't any of those people, right? He was somebody that could challenge me and ask me questions that nobody else in my life could ask me.
Well, because, I think some of the vulnerability comes, there's no judgment. It's judgment free.
That's right.
There's no vested interest. It's the only vested interest is how do I help you to get past whatever issue you have. Yeah. Whereas if you're talking to somebody on your board, if you're talking to an employee, you always have to have that veil or that curtain up so that this way you don't divulge so much as to it then damages some credibility, or maybe it's, I don't know.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I think it goes both ways. I mean, when I was running the business, I knew that if there was an initiative that I wanted to execute, no matter what, I'd be able to execute it. I could get everybody to bend to my will, right?
Mhm.
This was that reality check of, is this a good idea? I needed a unfiltered, no agenda-free opinion. And that's what Steve really gave me.
So how much of those values, of going back to losing your mom, and your mom really, I guess, instilling in you, not only with who she was to you and your family, but also in her early passing, these values that you have in your company, how much did they reflect what she gave to you?
Yeah, I mean, my mom was my number one cheerleader. She believed I could do anything, and that made me believe I could do anything. And that was like ingrained in me. I felt like if I wanted something and I wanted to achieve something, I could do it. The values were, they were pretty basic. This is not rocket science, right? It was do what's right, especially when it's hard. And that especially when it's hard matters, right? Because, you have values. What do they mean if when you're pressed against the wall, you don't stand for them, right?
And especially when no one's looking.
That's right. When nobody's looking, or when everybody's looking and they expect you to break your value code, right? That happens too. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard. You get into these situations that are challenging, and you got to make difficult decisions. That was one of our values. The other was to protect and support our employees and our caregivers. And the last was to always do what's right for our client, no matter what. And that didn't matter if we were losing money, if it was going to cost us reputation, or if there was some other cost to it. We were going to do what was right for the client in the room. Those are the values. And we made a lot of decisions based on that.
It's funny because when we talk a little bit about, especially when people are watching and they're looking for you to break your values, a lot of times we're talking to clients about just the level in terms of which they expect from their employees and from their organization. And it's almost, you say, we operate at the level of exceptionalism, and that's where the bar is set, and we are the best in class.
Yep.
And then the minute you start to lower that bar with exceptions, you've now created a new baseline.
That's right.
So, not only is it important in terms of, just staying steadfast from a sticking to your values, but also the trickle down effect of how that could impact your organization just moving forward if you're starting to lower the standards, right?
I think you're onto it. I mean, bottom line is, everybody's talking about culture in the business, and how do you create culture, maintain culture, and all of that. It's not, I print out core values and I put it above the printer and everybody can read them. That's not culture.
No, you got to live it.
You got to live it. You have to represent it. You have to hire for culture, fire for culture, and you have to make the really hard decisions that you need to make around the culture that you mean, right? The culture that you're trying to create for your business. For us, it was really building this family business and treating our people like they were our family, and maintaining that standard. And it was doing that at some level of scale, right? There are a lot of mom and pop shops that had fired up in the home care space. And what we had achieved was this family dynamic and family business at scale. So we weren't this giant corporation. We were people that cared about people, and we're doing it for the right reasons, very mission-based.
It's amazing because family businesses, I mean, you talk about first generation to second generation, there's a small success rate. You drop it down to the third generation, it drops from like 40% to 13%.
Yeah.
You were able to get out in second generation and more successfully than most people can build a business at all.
Yeah. What
were some of the things that you learned along the way that, if you're a business owner listening to this podcast today, you would want to make sure that they take away with?
I think one of the things that hit me was, family business on the surface sounds really good. I get to work with people I love and trust and know, care about. But the normal bounds of business risk in a family business, you blow right past them, right? You're not only taking the normal business risk, but you're also now taking on the responsibility of the success of the people you love and care about the most in this world. And so I bore that, I carried that weight for 13 years.
Well, and people who have seen you at your best, at your worst, they know what buttons to push, when to push them, how to push them.
For sure.
There are certain things that family can get away with that hired employees cannot get away with.
Yep.
It happens at the kitchen table, at the Thanksgiving meal, at opening up Christmas presents or Hanukkah presents,
Thanksgiving
depending
was a
on
board
whatever
meeting.
it was,
I mean, that's essentially what it was. So listen, family business comes with enormous rewards, but also with enormous challenges. And just being eyes wide open to that. I think a lot of business owners who are in family businesses, they don't plan appropriately for succession. They don't set the family up for success. Kind of bring everybody in on this, we all want to work together, we care about each other, we love each other, but you've got to take it a step further. You've got to define the roles. You got to make sure people know what seats they're in. And you have to have a plan for how are you going to do next generation?
Yeah.
How are you going to execute that? And start building the support to make it so that that can happen.
Well, a lot of times we talk about just expectations, right? Communication and transparency are the two pillars of any relationship. And I probably have said that more times than I've said my name.
Yep.
And when you've got a family business, if you're not clear and communicative on terms of what the expectations are, then people start to create their own expectations.
That's right.
And then if they're not in alignment, it goes beyond just a business relationship. It then enters into personal space.
And it can, you're talking about people's livelihoods, you're talking about money, you're talking about power, talking about all of these different elements. And that can rip even the closest family completely apart. So, one takeaway is if you're in a family business, if you're the dad or the mom who's, running it and you've got your kids working in the business, put an operating agreement together, get this stuff papered, define the roles for your people, set your expectations with your children, have the difficult conversations when things are good, because you don't want to have those difficult conversations when everything hits the fan.
Did you have to get into a situation where you had difficult conversations, or the way that you guys created the new entity and moved forward, it was more methodical in terms of building the business together?
No, I think it was, we definitely had our challenges for sure. One, I state the operating agreement example as one that, this is a tough story, but I'll tell you that I'm in a situation where my father, who again, mentor, I love my father. We have a tremendous relationship with each other, but we're in a situation where he's sick. He's in the hospital and we don't know if he's going to make it. And I remember being so deeply concerned and worried about my father. And then equally, as the CEO of our business, concerned about our business and what it meant for our business. And it's really hard to kind of live in that space of dual concern, right?
Because sometimes they're a conflict with one another.
Yeah. And
from the sense of where's your attention?
That's
really, right. And then morally, oh my God, am I thinking about the business more than I'm thinking of my dad?
That's right. That's right. And the responsibility was I had to think about both. I had to be there for both because I had hundreds of employees that were depending on this business, being successful and their livelihoods. And I also had a dad and a family who, needed me. And so, that's just like an example of, it doesn't always go the way you're planning. And so make sure you plan, you have to plan. You got to put the conditions in place so that if the unknown happens, the right plan is executed and people know their role.
So dad was sick. You're running the business, right? You're prepping for exit at some point. Talk to us a little bit, finish up that thought in terms of a couple things that because I do want to get into Vistage.
Yeah.
I want to get into the life after. I want to get into some of the work that you're doing now that's bringing a lot of, I would say, value to you as a life, for your life, to you as a person. And I think you fit perfectly in the space.
Thank you.
But, before we jump into what's going on now, how did then and now converge, and what were some of the material things that happened within the sale that you think matters to go into the next story?
So I'll just share my Vistage group that I was a member of absolutely changed my life, and the way that it changed my life.
So Vistage is just a mastermind group of business owners with no agenda other than to help and advise one another based upon experiences. It's not a networking group to where you're passing along business and trying to
100%. Yeah. This is
network.
Not a B&I group.
Right.
That's not what this is. This is, I treated it like my board of advisors, right? But it's
heavy is the head that wears the crown. Who's here with me? Help me make decisions.
That's right.
Again, back to there's no hidden agenda. There's no ulterior motive. It's all about how do we bring the right advice based upon experience.
But I brought it up because it was that journey, and it was watching peers, friends of mine who were in that group try to transact their business and fail, or transact their business, sell it, and have a huge win and a success through it. And all the stories around that. It was the issue processing around how this gets done. I'd never sold a business in my life. And by the time it was my turn at bat, it's for all the marbles.
Yeah, you don't get a do-over button. Your do-over button is, oh shit, I have to go build another business.
Right? Oops. It's for all the marbles. It's the highest stakes game you've ever played. And it's the first time you're ever playing it. So the experience of watching peers go through this experience and learn from them and lean on them gave me the ability to, when it was my time to go, I was negotiating against $1 billion organization, the largest healthcare service firm in North America.
Right. And your firepower is different than their firepower.
Yeah, just a little bit. But to be able to do that and get to a yes that worked for both entities perfectly, I would not have been able to show up to that with the same ability had I not been in a room with other people that were going through it.
Yeah, I think people who try to, we see it all the time. I'm sure you see it dealing with the business owners that you interview to try to bring into Vistage, the people that are just introduced to you because of your good advice and your sage business acumen. People try to go at it alone.
Yeah.
And they use the advice of maybe somebody who has some knowledge of running a business, but not experts or professionals that are top in their industry.
Yeah.
Which is scary. It gets scary.
A lot of people don't even think about the business as an asset, and in many cases, the business is their biggest asset, but they're not.
They look at it as income.
Yeah.
It's my job.
That's right. And I'm not saying that's for everyone, but I'm just saying that mindset of this business is, for many of us, the largest asset that we have. And how do we treat it with that level of respect? It's more than a job. It's more than an income stream. It's something that you're building that can create, wealth and generational wealth. And so how do you just appropriately manage that? And so I think that mind shift at one point of very mission-based business, we're doing this for the right reasons, but then also respecting the business that we were building as the asset that it was and preparing it for that, right? And what is that? That's doing it right. It's having your books tight. It's being compliant, right? It's being mission, but having all the paper to back it all up, right?
And it's amazing how when you follow those processes, you just inherently do better at your business. Your results are better. And then all of a sudden, operationally, it runs more smoothly. You're making more money. It's growing. And you go, oh, wow, this could work. But people who don't follow those processes or don't even have a process and look at it as a job, they're constantly going, man, being a business owner sucks. It's tough. You got to be the butcher. You got to be the baker. You got to be the candlestick maker. Yeah. And there's got to be an evolution. Most people start that way. What's the evolution? Where are you headed and how are you going to get there?
You can create a flywheel by taking advantage of the things that you were just talking about. Getting those processes in place, running the business like a real business, mining it and caring for it. And what that flywheel is it starts to attract really exceptional people. Great people want to be around something that feels really good. And they want to have that confidence that the company is run exceptionally well. And that's what we started to do. And we were able to attract really wonderful people that were also shared in our mission, shared in our culture, and cared a lot about what we were actually doing.
Anything in that process that just sticks out that you say, hey, listen, if you guys are going through this right now, we're thinking about it, make sure you do this, that, and the other thing?
I think it's having really real core values. And then it's in the moments where those core values are challenged, using those as an opportunity to reinforce what you mean by those values. I think that's a huge takeaway. It's got to be something that you're activating, and you're doing, and people are mindful of it and they see it so that they can feel it, so that they emanate those values throughout the organization all the way down. And
did you feel that, is that something that you've kind of learned along the way, or is that something that you felt when you were going through this whole process?
No, I think it's just the way I chose to run the business, and ultimately the way we brought it forward. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about that exit. You're transacting the deal. What did it look like? How did it walk? How did it talk? How did it sound?
Yeah. So,
and you don't have to get, I'm not saying getting to numbers. I'm just saying, you know, the grander picture of the process that you went through with the acquirer and with your family and with your employees.
So definitely some key takeaways here, right? Got the business to some scale. Over my journey, one of the things I did was I got very plugged in with our industry. So I was, the president of the Home Health Services Association. I led that through a merger with the Home Care Association of America. I became the chair of that chapter. I was also on the board of the Commission on Accreditation for Home Care. All these were volunteer positions where I was just giving to our industry and supporting our industry and helping us. But ultimately, what it also did was it made me very connected to the industry. I got to become very, very good friends with much of my competition, and that was powerful. Powerful for lots of reasons, for the human reason of just knowing people that are like-minded, but also from a business reason. Along the way, I met people that ultimately might be a potential suitor for our business. They were larger, they had the size and scale to acquire us, and they shared our mission. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting there and there's this one period of time, it was like a month long, where 3 of my buddies reached out to me and they said, Adam, we should start having a real discussion about.
I remember when that started happening. Yep.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's on, and that was the market telling us that there was an opportunity.
Did you shift in terms of when you were having conversations with people and they were telling you a little bit about what they were doing in their business, what they were looking for? Did you shift any of the processes within your own business to kind of mirror what they were looking for? Is that how you set yourself up, or did you just stay the course?
No, I stayed the course.
Stay the course.
I got, along the way, I got a piece of advice from an investment banker friend of mine. And he said, he goes, Adam, as you go through this process of selling the business, you have one job to do and one job only. And he said, Adam, you've got to run your fucking business. And he said it just like that. I printed it out. I put it above my monitor.
Run your fucking business.
Reminder, run your fucking business. Because at the end of the day, deals fall apart. I know people who the deal fell apart on signing day.
Yeah.
Like signing day, after everybody was notified and the cat's out of the bag and the deal fell apart.
Well, it's a sensationalizing event that people sometimes fall in love with the process and they're going, oh, I'm gonna sell and I'm gonna get this big check and it's gonna be great. And they forget, but you got to keep that thing going while you're dreaming about your exit and life after and the money that's going to be on the numerals that are going to be written out on the check. You got to make sure that the company maintains its value and it's still going in the right direction.
100%. And deals fall apart because you don't hit the targets. You don't hit, what you expected to hit, right?
Or deal falls apart and all of a sudden, so does your business a little bit. And the buyer says, now we want a fraction of now we're going to offer you a fraction of what we originally offered you.
It's tremendously powerful to sell your business when you don't have to sell. And if you're going through a process to maintain that quality so that at the end of that process, if it falls apart, you can walk away and your business is stronger than it was before you started.
I love that.
And that's the mentality you have to have going into it. And you got to know, no matter what you do, I had a dream team of people around me supporting us through this process. But even with that, I was working at max capacity before we went through the process, and I turned it up. Turned the dial all the way up, and I worked even harder. It takes a lot to run your business at the level that you're running it and sell your business at the same time. But that's what it takes, and you got to be prepared to do it.
It's almost like split attention, but you can't allow it to split your time.
No, you got to double it.
You got to double it. Yeah. All right. So through the sale, acquirer comes in, buys, you're fucking running your business. You're reminded every day by the note on the top of your computer screen. And now day comes, money's in the bank. You go to wake up and put your suit on and go to work, and you're like, "Oh shit, I don't have to do this anymore."
Well,
what did life look like? Now I want to get into that, the afterlife.
So let me tell you, Bobby. I mean, this is a moment, right? Built this business for 13 years. The deal's done, right? And here I am. I'm in my office, holding a brown box, packing my box in my office, the place I built.
Did you take any of the used furniture from the dumpster?
I did not.
No, not even like a souvenir.
That was all part of the deal. But seriously, I pack up my box and I walk out of my company, hugs, kisses, all that. And then it's like,
oh, I'm starting to get like an eerie feeling about that.
I mean, well, here's the moment, right? Driving so hard for a conclusion, driving and pushing so hard for it, and you hit it, and you think like, when you're in the process, you think, all right, when I get here, this is going to be that moment of celebration. And for me, put the box in the trunk, I'm driving home. I'm not bawling or crying, but
I was waiting for that. What 80s sob story song came on, and what
listening to Chicago full volume. No, I'm sitting there. I'm driving home, and I call my wife, and she goes, how do you feel? I said, you know what? I feel alone. This was my identity. These are my people. This is what I built and put my blood, sweat, and tears into. I mean, I dedicated everything to this. And she goes to me, she goes, Adam, you're not alone. Get home. And that was a moment for me, right?
Get home. I got shit for you to do.
Yeah, I got a honey-do list. Let's go.
I'm alone right now because you're not here helping me. So come on, let's go. Reality's calling.
Yeah, that's right. But that's a moment. And I think it's a moment I've met with many business owners over the years who have exited their businesses and struggled with that next chapter. What do I do after? As entrepreneurs, our identity, or at least my identity, was tied up in my business, in the role that I played within our industry. That was who I was. And you get done with that, and that chapter, that door closes. And suddenly it's like, well, what am I, right? Who am I? What am I going to be next? And people struggle with that. And I think there's a part of planning that you can do beforehand. Just some ideal life exercises, staying in your head, doing some journaling, taking some real time to consider it and think about it.
Well, you have to almost like de-identify.
Yeah.
You have to get excited about the next stage. And if there is no next stage prepped, it's almost like you're lost in limbo. And you're not really lost in limbo, but I think, to your point, if that's a passion of yours and you've been putting your time, energy, and effort, you've spilled everything into it, and you've gone through the process of putting in the extra hours to sell it.
Yeah.
And that takes even more dedication. And then all of a sudden it's done. It's like running through a finish line and then everybody dispersing and you kind of looking around being like, I guess I got to go home now.
Now what? Yeah. And, I'll tell you, Bobby, I can sit here and say, listen, plan it all out, know what you're going to do in the journey, like figure it out. What's your next step? But that's not necessarily, that doesn't align with reality for many people. I'm in the trenches and, honestly, when I was doing this and going through the process, I didn't want to think about day one after the sale because I wasn't sure if it was even going to happen. The whole time you're going through it, you're waiting for, the thing to fall apart.
But even after it did happen, I remember it took you some time to even just take that breath, that well-deserved, well-needed moment of clarity that took a while to come to you.
So I did a couple of things. One thing I did was I took a 3-month victory lap. Went down to the shore house, played with the kids, all of that, and just took 3 months to just kind of decompress from the experience that I just had, right? It was just, let's celebrate. Let's just lean into what it feels like to not be, on call 24/7, 365 and totally inundated with this. So I did that. Also in that process, I'm driving the kids to camp and I'm saying to myself, this is not the rest of my life. I'm 45 now, I've got more to give. I have more to do. I want to be professionally satisfied. And it's like the ultimate calling of the bluff, right? When you're in it and you're running your business and it's like, I've got these ideas and I'm imagining all this stuff that I can create and do if I only had the money or the time and the resources. Well, now you got the money, the time, and the resources. Now what? Game on.
Show up. Let's go.
Yeah. So when you're in that moment, one thing I was very conscious of is I didn't want inertia to just pull me into the next thing. I wanted an abrupt stop. And I wanted to take a moment to really think and reflect on what am I going to do next? How am I going to make the next chapter of my life ideal life? How am I going to do that? And listen, you get done and you can just roll right into something else and just go 150 miles an hour again. For me, as I reflect on my journey, I gave my business everything. I went 150 miles an hour for 13 years straight. It wasn't a matter of me getting home to, have dinner with my family. I was trying to get home to give the kids a kiss on their heads before they went to bed. That was my daily routine. I put it all into the business. And I don't even think I did that with real awareness of that sacrifice, what I was giving up, what I was risking.
Because you're too in the moment.
In the moment. Well, in the moment, and I was a lot more comfortable being the CEO of my business than I was being I'm not the CEO when I get home,
No.
It's a different dynamic. It's a different world.
Well, you have to figure it out too, because it's not something that necessarily will come natural if what comes natural to you is getting to work and building a business.
That's right. So I was comfortable in the business and with the business challenges and with all of that. That was like my happy place, right? Even when it was really, really hard, it was still the place I was most comfortable.
It's because it's logic versus emotion. You got to really get into that EQ, DNA, that part of your DNA that makes the kids happy, makes your wife happy, makes your family happy, makes you happy.
Right.
Finding those different things to, create opportunities to create memories, as opposed to I showed up from after work and I know I have this limited time. What are we going to do? Do we order dinner? Do we go down the shore? What do we do?
Right. I think that led to being hyper intentional about my next step, right? So we flash all the way forward to 3-month, great summer, best summer of my life. Really enjoyed it. And then it's like, all right, now what am I going to do? So what I actually did, Bobby, is I go and I rent a Regis office, 110 square feet of, colo space, right? With a receptionist at the front door.
Yep.
And I got dressed and went to work. Didn't have a job.
I was going to say.
Didn't have a business plan. Didn't have something I was building, but I knew I had to get up, get into a routine, go to a place that was private where I could be in my head and I could start to really dream about what am I going to do? How am I going to make this life that I have worth it and impactful?
I could just imagine you sitting there in a suit with your pencil sharpener in front of you and your 20 unsharpened pencils, just sharpening one pencil at a time. Being like, all right, we're getting ready for this. What are we doing? What's happening next?
So my pencil sharpener was, the analogy is, it was the Peloton at the Regis. I go to work, I get on the Peloton, work out for a half
hour. Get my
PR. Meditate, all of that. But it was in that where I started looking at businesses that I might be able to acquire or start to put some meat on the bone on some ideas that I had and what it would mean to actually launch them and get funding for them.
Now, did that feel exhausting to you at any point? Did you look at those and be like, I don't know if I'm ready to climb that mountain. I don't know if I'm willing to give everything I gave to the last endeavor, to whatever new endeavor I have. Did you grapple with any of those emotions?
Big time.
Yeah.
And the best exercise I did to kind of get through that was to define my ideal life. And I just made this up. I mean, maybe there's a book that references it. I got it from somewhere, I don't know. But I sat with my journal and I wrote down just all of the things that I'm really good at, right? All the things I'm really good at. And then in another column, I highlighted the things that I'm good at and I really enjoy doing. And then I highlighted the things that I'm good at and I don't like doing. And then I looked at all the things that I'm bad at, right? And I just kind of like had that captured, right? So I could see it.
It's like your matrix, your personal activity matrix.
That's right. And I started to craft what it means for me to live my ideal life with a prioritization, being home for dinner, not to kiss the kids goodnight, but to help them with their homework.
So you said you had new rule sets, rule sets for your life.
Yeah. Like, how do I make this
what fits into your life as opposed to what fits into your skill set?
That's right.
Okay.
So it was kind of merging those two thoughts, right? This is what I'm great at and I love to do. And this is the framework in which I'm willing to give and the framework in which I have to give to my family to make my life ideal, right? To make it complete. So, I mean, that turned off some of those opportunities that I had. I wasn't going to go and raise, a bunch of money and start a brand new business and, go crazy in this, in that path and go 150 miles an hour again.
Well, because one of the first things that we talked about in this interview was mom passed.
Yeah.
Money's not everything.
Yeah.
Time is valuable. Family's valuable.
That's right, Bobby. And some way along that path, I lost track of that a little bit. And I had to find that again. I had to prioritize that and make it part of the plan. So that's what I did. Sitting in that Regis office, journaling, thinking, writing it down, researching things. having meetings with people, connecting with my network and friends, and just kind of getting into the world again as a professional, trying to find, what's the next step? What's the next opportunity? So for me, it's always been mission-based. It's always been about having impact. It's always been about having a human connection.
What about that amps you up? Like if you think about your days, you think about your own personal mission, you think about what gets your juices flowing. What is that?
To me, it's a way to live forever. It's this notion of if I can have impact on a positive impact on as many people as possible, that creates a legacy of my life after I'm gone. That's what my mother did for me. And that is what has motivated me and driven me through my entire career.
Wow. How do you feel you're doing in that journey? Where do you feel like you have to spend more of your time to giving that impact?
So the place, when I look back on my journey, one of the biggest influences on my life was my Vistage group. And I know that sounds like self-serving or whatever, but it's very true. My group changed my life. And so as I started to lean into what my next chapter was going to be, a couple of my friends that were Vistage chairs said, Adam, go to Vistage Academy, do the training. It's a couple months long, and see how it feels. You got something to learn. And I went through that process, and there was a moment where it was like, where I knew I arrived, right? And that moment was after I had spent months going through training and then months meeting with people and cultivating my group, was actually launching that group and having our first full day, executive meeting. And that was the moment where I was like, I've arrived. I've put the Vistage cape on and it feels friggin' good. It feels good. And this is a way that I feel that I can, use my skill set, help other business owners and entrepreneurs accelerate their growth and their impact and live forever. Right? That's it. That's the goal.
So, obviously living forever, it's almost weird for me to ask, what would be the one or two quotes in your eulogy that would really mean something to you if you were still alive to hear it. But, what is that? What would that sound like? How do you want to be remembered? Articulate that for us.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, the mentors that I had throughout my life, they believed in me, and they created opportunity for me to either succeed or to fail. And I want to create opportunity for others, right? To be self-reflective, to think about their space and where they are so that they can accelerate their success. So, I mean, I want people to feel like, like I had a positive impact in their life. Like I helped them with something like they were better because they ran into me at some point.
So kids are young right now.
Yeah.
How does that transcend to them as they start to get older? What are some of the things that go through your mind in terms of how your legacy is going to be left with them?
Now, I talk a lot as I was leading my company and even in Vistage now about turning fear into faith. And I don't mean it like maybe in a religious sense, but it's faith, however that shows up for you in your life. And it could be religious. It doesn't have to be. But it's this notion of do not live your life in fear, because that will rob you of all of your future potential. Lean in, take the leap, jump, try things, experiment, risk it. Talk a lot about there's a lot of discussion about risk along the way. And I think one of the critical pieces when you're considering risk on the table is to consider not only the risk of taking action, but the risk of inaction.
Yep. It's regret. It's that regret that's that powerful. You can't live with the fear or the fear of regret.
That's right. And so, I want my kids to be free to and feel free to experiment and play and have fun and try things and get things wrong and learn from it and get something right and be excited about it. That's ultimately what I want for my children.
And do you share that as a family? Same values?
Yeah, I think we do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, we've been about 50 minutes now, and, we try to keep these things about 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
But before we leave, if there were three things that you were going to leave behind for your kids, whether they're three things that they should live by, three things that you would leave to them, three concepts or ideas of mindset or you name it. What would those three things be that you would hope would change their mind or the people that you've mentored as a mentor in business?
Yeah. So number one is what we were just talking about, right? It's live with faith, right? Have faith in yourself and your fellow man. I think the second thing is to care deeply about people. Just show up for them, be there for others. And I guess the last one would be listen first, listen hard, listen with deep curiosity. For me, that's been like maybe a superpower, right?
Yeah.
Is that ability to really show up in a deeply curious way to understand.
You have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. And so many times people are listening to respond, right? And when we just show up to listen to hear, it changes the life we have with other people.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we've known each other for years.
Yeah.
And to watch you grow into the second stage of life, I cannot wait to see what comes of this, because there's how many members in each group?
Yeah. So, I mean, my groups are, they max out at 18. Between the two of them, I've got less than 10 seats left on the plane. And then I'm done. That's it. That's
for now.
Yeah. Well,
but those are the 26 lives that you're impacting.
Yeah.
Right. And up to 36 for this current version until somebody tells you that there's another group available for you to take on.
Listen, I'm trying real hard to not go 150 miles an hour. I want to have impact. I want to help people, but I want to show up in that. I want to hold myself back a little bit from going, 150 miles an hour. So
now, our listeners, if they're looking for you and they want to find you, where do they go?
Find me on LinkedIn, Adam Blecker. You can also go to my website, solutionsinplace.com. It's my own little consulting business. But my primary focus at this point is really running my groups, showing up for my CEO members. And I'm also building a key group as well for that next in line to help those leaders, succeed.
We have great insight, and I'm so glad that we spent the time today to get you on here. And that's a wrap for episode 10, guys.
All right, here we go. Thanks,
Good job, Adam. Dude, I really appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Yeah, good stuff. All right.
Awesome.